The Fact Controller's engines can sometimes get lost in their own little world on the island of Sodor, a railway network where time stood still and nostalgia reigned supreme. The engines all know of events that have happened beyond their shores, but it never seems to affect the pace of life for them. But one event was to change everything and to go down in the island's history books. The Fact Controller stood on the turntable with very important news. "As you are all aware," he began, "London is to host the Olympic Games this year, and before they commence, the Olympic torch will travel across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. For the first time in our island's history, the Olympic torch will be making its way here." The engines erupted into a chorus of whistles. The Fact Controller held his ears. "I never thought I'd see the day," cheered Edward. "Who'd have thought our little island would be visited by the very flame that will begin the games?" cried Duck excitedly. The Fact Controller raised his hand for silence. "As the island is famous for its continuation of classic traction on the railways, the Olympic torch will stick close to the railways of Sodor," announced the Fact Controller. "I have scheduled for some of you to carry the torch to certain destinations across our line. While not all of you will have the privilege of carrying the flame, the majority of you all will be able to see it." The engines once again cheered loudly and talked all night in anticipation for when the torch would arrive. Preparations for the torch's arrival soon began. Bunting and banners and huge flags of the Union Jack were hung in all the stations. Decorating the big station took the longest. There was a lot of open space to decorate, and the workmen had to work around the constant flow of passenger trains coming in and out of the station. Pip and Emma worked the express to London. Since they were to be used continuously over the summer to take passengers and tourists from the island to London, the Fact Controller took the decision to give Pip and Emma a refit. They were to receive new engines just like their brothers and sisters on the mainland. Pip and Emma were very pleased. This meant they could keep up with the intense timetable the Fact Controller had planned for them. They had heard news that the torch was getting closer to the island, and just like the rest of the engines, they were very excited too. But one morning at the big station, before they were to be given their refit, the two diesels asked their driver about the flame. "Is it dangerous?" asked Pip innocently. The driver seemed confused. "What is?" he asked. "The Olympic torch," said Emma. "Isn't it a real flame?" The driver was still puzzled. "Yes, indeed it is. Why do you ask?" "Trains aren't supposed to have flames inside of them," replied Pip. "It's against the rules." James bustled in next to the HST. He had heard everything. "Pah!" he snorted. "We have fires inside of us, and that's not against the rules." "But you're a steam engine, not a train," retorted Pip. "Anyway, you have a firebox. That's where your fire is meant to go. Fires aren't meant to be in coaches." "Especially high-speed ones," added Emma. "Imagine if there was a fire at high speed." The two diesels quivered together. "Perish the thought," they said. James had no answer for this, and so steamed away with his stopping train. The driver comforted the sisters. "You'll be perfectly fine," he soothed. "The Olympic flame is only small, and it'll be quite safe." Pip and Emma felt much better, and began thinking about their refit. It wasn't long before the guard blew his whistle, and the train set off for London. Pip and Emma were soon coasting smoothly along the line. They raced past stations and hooted their horns cheerfully as they overtook the other engines. Up ahead was Donald. Donald was working hard, hauling a long line of fully loaded coal trucks. Clouds of black smoke billowed into the air as he snorted along. The HST thundered past. Pip, who was leading, took a deep breath of fresh air. "Ah, that's better," she sighed happily. But Emma was less than impressed. She could see they had left Donald far behind, but strangely she could still smell smoke. She began to cough as it began to get thicker. "Something isn't right," she said to herself. At Wellsworth Station, James was stood in the platform when he could see Pip and Emma approaching fast. He squinted his eyes tightly. It appeared that smoke was drifting from one of the carriages. Then suddenly, everything happened at once. "Fire!" screamed the diesels. Pip and Emma were brought to an emergency stop just outside of the station. James watched in horror as one of the carriage windows smashed and flames could be seen lashing out. Passengers began to evacuate the train and hurtled up the station ramp. The flames grew bigger and the smoke became thicker. Immediately, the driver uncoupled both sides of the coach. Emma rolled a couple of yards back down the line with a few coaches. Then the driver ran back to the cab with Pip. "Are you all right, Pip?" shrieked Emma. Then there was trouble. Pip's engine wouldn't restart. "Help!" she cried in panic. "I can't move!" James called out to his driver. "Come on, we must rescue Pip," he yelled. Quickly, James was redirected onto Pip's line. He was coupled up and pulled Pip away from the burning coach. The fire brigade was soon on the scene, and the fire on board was swiftly put out. The passengers were very surprised, but none more so than the engines. None of them said a word. The next day, the Fact Controller came to visit Pip and Emma whilst they received their refit. They seemed rather pale and reserved. The fire was caused by a selfish act from a passenger who decided to break the law and light a cigarette in the toilets. He stupidly threw the cigarette into a bin full of used paper towels, resulting in the fire starting, explained the Fact Controller. The man has been arrested by the police. This is a very serious offence. Pip and Emma looked at each other and gulped. "Something as small as a cigarette caused so much damage," said Emma, astonished. "Please, sir, after our refit, may we not carry the Olympic torch, sir?" murmured Pip. The Fact Controller just nodded. He completely understood.